My name is Amy Cheney, and I have over 20 years of experience serving multicultural populations and doing outreach through the library. Currently, I work with incarcerated teens. I have worked with as young as preschool and as old as adult. And I've been asked to talk about barriers to service or how to create access to service. And so I just want to give I don't have much time, so I think what I'm going to do is just give some very, hopefully, illustrative examples that will pique your mind and curiosity and have you think about things. So the first thing I want to say is the best thing you can do to create access is to be aware that you are not creating access and to look at all the ways that you are not creating access, because that's the norm. My dissertation at San Jose State was on how libraries are serving the white and middle class. I'm lucky. I work with kids that will tell me straight up what's going on, and I listen to them. So I want to give you my first example, which is that one day I was tired, I was hungry, I was all those things, and I had probably 20 girls, and they all wanted books, and they all wanted books now. And most of them were African American, because due to disproportionate minority confinement, that's who I primarily serve. And they were loud, and they were in my face, and they were just doing all the things that African American girls do. And I'm just like, I snapped. And I said something like, I cannot deal with this. I'm not answering any more questions. About 2 minutes later, this little white girl comes up to me, and she asked me a question about a book. And I turned to her, and I answered her question, and I got her the book. And the girls were pissed. And they were like, "You are so racist." And I looked at them, and I saw at what I had done, and I said, "You are so right. I am so sorry. Will you forgive me?" So that example, I think, is great because it was totally unconscious. I was really just having a challenge dealing with all that, and I could handle a little white girl who was quiet. What was great, and what probably doesn't happen often, is the girls called me on it. And second of all, I know I'm racist, so I wasn't defensive. I want to know how I'm racist. I want to know how I am not looking at issues that include access for all people. So, for you, talk to your kids. Make a survey in your library. How have you experienced racism in your library? And listen to them. Take it seriously. Because I could have brushed that off, and I could have said, no, that wasn't racist, but it was. So that's the basic thing you have control over is you and how you do that. A lot of things we don't have control over. However, we can advocate for that in the library. So, for example, I'm going to read you a quote from a young girl who was in my library. And a lot of my kids come and go from the juvenile hall. They're run away from a group home. They come back. They get placed again. So she had been there quite a bit. And I'm going to read a direct quote. This is from Dominique. And she was in my library and talking. And then I asked her if I could write down what she was saying. So I wrote down what she said. And she said, "I used to go to the library when I was in middle school to use the computers, but I never checked out a book before. Or if I did, I didn't read it. But now, when I got out, my mom took me to the library, and I got a library card because I wanted to finish the books I was reading in here. I found The Lost Boy, and I finished that off, but they didn't have Amani Says Goodbye, so I couldn't finish that one. I like to read African American fiction, but I couldn't find Amani All Mine either. I wanted to let my cousin know about that book." Well, I think that example says so much about what happens to a lot of our patrons as they come in, if they even get through the door, because I think a lot of people are stymied by the whole government building situation. I mean, the government is not a friendly place. If you're a person of color or you're poor, it's not necessarily a great place to go. So a lot of people won't even get through that barrier. But let's say they do, and she came in and she could find The Lost Boy, but not these two African American titles. So I'd like you to go look on your computer and see how many copies of A Child Called It or A Lost Boy you have, and how many copies of Amani All Mine or Amani, what was it? Amani All Mine or Amani Says Goodbye. Those are two separate books by two separate authors. They're equally as popular in my library is the point. And I bet you they would be in yours if you have a population of children of color. So this illustrates the example of a lot of things. How does she find the book? What books do you have on the shelf? Those kind of things. Do you buy a lot of copies of the books that, I know you buy a lot of A Child Called It, but do you buy a lot of Amani All Mine or Retaliation or something like that that is just so hot and popular? There's also a slide, I believe, that is going to be in the background. It's so, I love when I find this graffiti in the books. I don't know which ones they're going to put up there, but I think they're going to put up one that says, I want books on guns, drugs, violence, sex, and Sister Soldier could come see us. And I love it because, of course, I work in a juvenile hall, so, you know, theoretically, they don't want books on those topics in there. And Sister Soldier does not like to fly, and she lives on the East Coast, so I don't think she's coming out. So, you know, this is the challenge for outreach, is how do you take what the kids want and find something that's going to satisfy them and more? And that's the question that I had to start with. And I love it because I hope you can come visit me up there, because I think you'll see that they're really excited about books and reading. So it's finding those authors that are going to support what they want, but may not be what they think they want right away. But Ishmael BAYA, for example, is going to support guns, drugs, and violence. No sex in there. But it'll support all of those kind of things, and it's a fabulous book. So it's a challenge to find those. I have to throw in an example about Midnight by Sister Soldier. I buy cases of the book, The Coldest Winter Ever. There are some books that you just have to have on the shelf no matter what. And I know it gets stolen from your library shelves. If Harry Potter got stolen from your library shelves, would you buy more of them? I think so. So, you know, cases of Coldest Winter Ever. And when Midnight was coming out, her second book that was related to Coldest Winter Ever, I bought a ton of them. And a colleague was telling me, I said, how many copies did your library buy? And she said, oh, I think we bought, and she actually checked the catalog, and they had bought 2 copies of Midnight. And I couldn't believe it, because this is such an important book. So I think I hope these examples are things that that'll help spark your interest in looking at other examples and validate you for those things that you already know about. So I think a question about Midnight is also a good one, because it's kind of like, are you aware of the books that are coming out that are going to be hits before they come out? Such as the entire world knows Harry Potter's going to be a hit, and we're all buying those before, you know, at midnight, the night of, and all that. But are you aware that Midnight's going to be a hit? Have you purchased enough copies for your population? And not just sort of catching up after the fact. And so I think that a lot of this has to do with you. It also has to do with your administration, because is your administration willing to allow you the time to do this kind of outreach that you need to do in order to serve other people? And I know we're all busy in our libraries with the patrons that we already have. And I'm not saying that, you know, we only serve white people. I'm just saying that I think there's a bias towards that. So